Faster in the straights.
But would you go a little bit to the left, try and stop Max Verstappen cutting in ahead, and maybe try and
Morning, everyone.
inside line.
Oh,
Around the outside,
what is the time? 6 a.m.
Apex.
Literally just about to watch the start of the race.
Who knows? As all phone
Let's get into it.
trained on the
Quickly, predictions for the race. I'm going to say
making their way onto the grid.
Lando wins. Yeah, I'm going to say Lando wins. Oscar, then George Russell gets pole.
Watch for that battle at the start.
Oh yeah, because there's one that got you, and the other one like, oh you little bugger. Well, you know, that's not. You're not supposed to be in that car, and so that will be interesting to see.
You couldn't make it up, could you? The man that replaces the man that's dropped down to Racing Bulls now starts alongside the man that he's replaced.
Yeah, because you know the Red Bull driver now did better than he did, so there will be some frustration there.
Look at this.
Go.
Max Verstappen is pointing to the right. Lando Norris is
Oh
pointing
mate, I'm
to the
tired.
left.
Very
There's
tired.
a bit of smoke coming out the back. It could just be. Is that a bit of fire? I didn't know if that was the rain light or.
See, is anyone in the chat yet?
Blinking, or just a little bit of fire in there, but it was definitely smoking. Could be a bit of oil that's been overfilled.
Is there going to be any red flags?
Force aiming for the immovable object. Max Verstappen pointing to the right. Lando Norris pointing.
And it's lights out, and away they go. Who gets away the best? Max does.
Slots into third ahead of Charles Leclerc, and then come the two Mercedes. It's Verstappen into turn one ahead, and now it all gets concertinaed together. Round the outside, there is the Racing Bull of Isaac Hadjar ahead of Lewis Hamilton. It's Verstappen from Norris, and then comes Oscar Piastri. The top three all getting away well. Fernando Alonso under pressure, battling away with Pierre Gasly as they go up through the S's.
Surprisingly good start from Norris from where he was. Very clean. There was no battle. Now they can get into the rhythm. He has his teammate to protect him, but he won't be able to do his pace, which means the guys behind will stay with them.
Right, let's see how this race then unfolds. The starts for a Suzuka start. That was absolutely inch perfect from every driver there, and nobody together as down the inside at the hairpin. Fernando Alonso has Ollie Behrman for company. Behrman just ahead in 10th place currently. There's Alex Albon in the Williams chasing after Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. He's quite close as we get towards Spoon Curve here, and if you get a decent exit out of Spoon Curve, you can carry that speed down the straight and towards the chicane as the Alpine and the Aston Martin still battling away. Fernando Alonso has got his hands very much full of Pierre Gasly's Alpine.
Then Alonso is trying to move to the right because he wants to get that toe from the car in front, and he did because it's a long straight line. No DRS, you get a big toe.
He's a bit vulnerable as Fernando Alonso, looking in his mirrors to see where Pierre Gasly is, and he is still behind as they go through the chicane, and out in front Verstappen has a lead of a second over Lando Norris as DRS is now enabled on this lap, and they splosh through the puddles on that left-hand side that have been left by the early morning rain. Piastri is 7/10 behind his teammate Lando Norris as they cross the line. Then Leclerc, Russell and Antonelli, Hadjar ahead of Hamilton, Albon ahead of Behrman, the top 10, all keeping in formation.
It was a surprisingly calm start. I don't have memories of a start like this in Suzuka. The conditions are good. There's not too much wind. It's cool. The aero is working really well. Now
So there's been no overtakes in the top 10.
Well, that's a big unknown today because it's temperature in the air and temperature on the track a lot cooler than we've had all weekend long. The wind has dropped a bit today as well. How will that affect tyre graining as we go through this race?
And also full tanks, running in traffic, lose a lot of downforce, and didn't get a proper practice Friday afternoon where they normally do the long runs to figure out what the tires do.
All a bit of an unknown. You can see just a bit of spray still coming up, particularly there from the rear of Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes as he slots into 6th place in what is his 3rd Grand Prix start, and the last start that he's got in his bid to become the youngest ever Grand Prix winner. After today, he'll be too old to take that claim away from Max Verstappen.
That's a record that you don't have much time to beat, so definitely you would like to. But if you look at the positions now. Hamilton did a good job. He's on the hard tie and he didn't lose a position. That's looking good for him for the rest of the race.
One person who has lost a position is Nico Hulkenberg. Carlos Sainz is
Oh, I didn't realise Hamilton started them hard.
DRS there for the McLaren of Lando
Okay.
Norris and for the McLaren of Oscar Piastri. And that DRS down the straight is worth about
Did not realise
17
this.
kilometres an hour. Bit of a DRS formation there, as a lot of cars have got that advantage. 17 kilometres an hour. It is quite a bit to try and get you level with the car in front.
It is a lot, but it only helps.
Oh, Antonelli at the chicane. That is not the way to take that.
No, definitely not. And they will have a look to see if he's gained any distance on the car preceding him. It looks like he didn't lose anything, was quite neutral. Yeah, the DRS only helps when the driver ahead doesn't have DRS. Once they all get in the DRS train, there's actually less of a tow effect because they move less air around.
So the key thing, though,
My options got really bad.
so I'm sure he's either feeling a bit of a lag or a bit of a clunking jerk from the car.
That means the timing of it all is not completely in place. It gives a little jolt every time, which is not good for the engine, not good for the gearbox, and not good for the drivability. So he must be very happy to be in the lead in that situation.
Early places made here for Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson. Tsunoda ahead of Lawson in 13th, so he's won that particular battle for the time being. Gabriel Bortoleto has dropped down to 20th, and behind now the soft tyre runners of Stroll and of Doohan. As you can see the car sliding through that chicane. They won't want to be doing that on too many occasions. And crucially for Max Verstappen, out now of DRS threat from Lando Norris behind him. Oscar Piastri has got the DRS advantage. You can see him just gaining by a couple of tenths down the straight on this lap 4 of 53.
Oh, we're
When
lagging.
you have the DRS, if you're close enough,
Right, I'm
maybe
lagging.
battle, but then you'll be too close in the S's, and that's when you'll start overheating your tires. So it's a, it's a double-edged sword there. You're not sure what the best situation is.
That's what
So
George Russell's
Yuki
facing
is
at the
back
moment
ahead
here,
of
behind Charles Leclerc.
Lawson,
So
which is good.
Verstappen got the better launch and cut off any threat from Lando Norris straight away.
He did, but Norris was really good, aggressive into turn one, was the outside, and Piastri was really far behind. He backed off into that turn one to give space for a teammate to do a fight with Verstappen ahead.
Saw Fernando Alonso briefly getting ahead of Pierre Gasly, and then that carried on that battle, and he did manage to stay ahead in 11th. We can watch now as from Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes, it's Isaac Hadjar right behind him, and this is where it all gets very close for comfort, and you can almost hear the drivers shouting over the engines as you go into turn 2.
Yeah, because they want to be aggressive. They get hard on the gas. They don't want to be overtaken, but the tires are not yet up to temperature, and that's when they get caught out.
Gabriel Bortoleto called out by damp patch, I think there. A lot of wheel spin and quickly passed by Esteban Ocon.
And he backed off of it as well. Okay, we're at the back anyway. Let's not do anything stupid.
Yeah, through go the soft tyre runners of Doohan and of Stroll. And this is the Gasly-Alonso battle. They were running wheel to wheel for pretty much all of the 3.6 miles that encompassed the first lap. And God, how close do they get there?
Yeah, but what you don't see there, this close, the driver behind is actually taking the air out of the driver ahead, and it slows down the driver ahead.
Not enough for Pierre Gasly. Look how much closer Oscar Piastri has now got to Lando Norris. He's got DRS, one DRS zone here down the main straight. Norris hasn't got that extra advantage on the straight in his battle that he's losing out to at the moment. Max Verstappen. Carlos Sainz, we said, got past Nico Hulkenberg. That's where that happened at the hairpin.
Very good move because Hulkenberg was not seeing it coming, and that was a nice dive from Sainz.
Reminiscence of, like yourself, former Sauber driver Kamui Kobayashi, who used to make a habit of getting in the inside at that hairpin.
It's a difficult place to overtake because you have to make sure the driver in front won't actually try blocking you, because by then it's too late.
Whatever the problem is with the gear shifts, they think they found a solution down at Red Bull. And Max Verstappen probably doesn't want to wait 2 or 3 laps, but he's going to have to. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
That was an important move by Carlos Sainz to the Williams, because he lost that place off the start to Hulkenberg, but has got back 15th, which is where he started on the grid. Interesting pace of the Ferraris, Crofty. They're just starting. Leclerc is just starting to pick up his pace now, but he's already 3 seconds behind the leader, and that means that I think Mercedes feel that he's holding up George Russell. I think he's got a bit more pace than he's able to
Hang
show
on, Ted,
right
2
now.
seconds. Lewis Hamilton showing Isaac Hadger how it's done with DRS into turn 1, making the move and up to 7th place. Hard compound tyre as opposed to medium compound tyre. And Isaac Hadger, who has marvelled over many Lewis Hamilton overtakes in the past, probably doesn't want to see that one too often.
Yeah, well, you will marvel following Lewis now, and he can learn a lot from following him. I think the hard tires now are starting to help a little bit. They don't overheat as much during the whole lap, which means there's more potential to come out of the chicane at low speed, get on the gas. That allowed Lewis to be close enough to Hadjar that with the DRS he had enough speed to then overtake him.
You know how yesterday when Verstappen got that pole lap, 4th consecutive pole here, and by the way, no driver's ever won 4 consecutive races here at Suzuka. A lot of the brilliance was through the S's, through that first sector, and that advantage he's got by leading at the moment is showing itself in the first sector because he's constantly about 2/10 clear through those S's because he's got the clean air in front of him.
This is the part of the track where it will count the most. Every other corner, there's a little bit of a stretch, a braking turn, so you lose a little bit, but not as much. But there, with the combination, you gain a lot, and the drivers behind overheat their tires, and they carry that penalty throughout the whole lap.
So what would you do if you're Oscar Piastri here and we're riding on board with him on the left-hand side of your screen? So he's got the DRS, and he'll get to about 0.6 of a second close to Lando Norris, which is more than enough to be overheating the tyres and making the tyres get affected by the turbulent wake. But he seems to have more pace than Lando Norris at the moment, and not just because of the DRS.
Yeah, but is Norris backing off a bit because he overheated his tires behind Verstappen? That's hard to know. And Piastri is obliged to put the pressure on Norris. Otherwise, he lets Leclerc come into his DRS zone, and then he's a sitting duck.
Absolutely. So Charles Leclerc not overly far behind Oscar Piastri. George Russell still has that DRS advantage down the straight because he's within 1 second of Charles Leclerc, and we can ride on board with the race leader, Max Verstappen, through the hairpin. Max Verstappen, who only led 2 laps this season before today.
Should far a bit better. Understood.
And on lap 7 of 53 here, which he has led throughout from the lights out, is probably feeling an awful lot better every time. He shifts up a gear, which he's doing now down that back straight. Ted, down to you.
Just a quick one on Hamilton. This hard tyre start strategy is actually working really well for him, Crompy.
Yeah.
He's doing the same lap times as Charles Leclerc in the same Ferrari, and Charles Leclerc is on the medium tyre, a step softer. So I think this is nice thinking from Ferrari, splitting the strategies, doing something different from Hamilton, and Hamilton's now closing on Kimi Antonelli, his old seat in Mercedes.
The word from Ferrari at our little briefing this morning was that the performance of the hard and the medium was not too dissimilar, certainly in terms of graining. And in terms of longevity, the hard should go that little bit longer. So I did say to them, well, maybe you want to start one of your drivers on the hard then and see if you can gain some track position that way.
You have power.
I am not claiming that strategy. They've got a more than a good enough team back at Maranello. But it surprised me a little bit, Jacques, that I didn't see more starting on the hard tyre through the field.
I think the worry was off the grid because it has a little bit less grip. It's harder to warm up. There were some humid patches, so they didn't want to take a risk. It's a tyre that, even though it has less grip, it will have more support laterally in the high speed, which is not a bad thing on this track. And also, they probably judged that they would be a train, that Verstappen would be slowing a little bit everybody down. So the drivers in medium wouldn't be at full pace.
He's not slowing Lando Norris down at the moment, Max Verstappen. He's consistently 2 or 3 tenths a second a lap faster.
I think Norris backed off to stay out of the wake in the high-speed corners. 2 seconds is still a little bit close. So it will heat a little bit, but not as bad, but he still gets a toe down the straight.
Now we're expecting a one-stop race here. If you are going to stop earlier than your rival, try what they call the undercuts. Pit before your rival, get onto the fresh tyres and hope that on your out lap you can bang in a quick enough time so that when your rival stops, he's now behind you. You need to be within 1 second to make that undercut work. So if Lando is backing off, at some stage he is going to have to up his pace to try and make that undercut work.
That will allow him to have a little bit better tyres later in the race. Anyway, better than Piastri, who's stuck to him. Not better than Verstappen for sure, but for him there's also the battle against Piastri. In his mind, the driver he's fighting for the championship is Piastri.
Yuki Tsunoda has DRS to get close to Pierre Gasly. Liam Lawson, who's been overtaken by Tsunoda, has DRS problems. And that is Carlos Sainz, who's getting an awful lot closer here as he tries to move up the field, and we can ride on board with Carlos Sainz in the Williams now. Three-place grid penalty for him in this race, impeding Lewis Hamilton during qualifying yesterday.
And Lando, there is possible rain, lap 20, +1, one lap, doesn't change our plan.
As in, we're not thinking about intermediate tyres, even if the rain does come.
As they said, one lap, which means it would, well, it's not been sunny, but it wouldn't wet the track.
No. The only worry, I think, from the teams is the new surface. Will the water just sit on top of that surface a bit and make it really tricky through the SS section?
If you have a slightly greasy track now, it doesn't matter too much. The tires are hot and warm, so they still grip.
And it is often the way, as long as you've got the temperature of the tyres, you're okay. Staying off the curbs is probably a decent idea, but through the smooth corner, you do want to make best use of those curbs. As now, getting a slipstream, Carlos Sainz is coming back at Liam Lawson once again. Lawson, one of the 6 rookie drivers in the field this season. He hasn't completed a full season, that's why he's still a rookie. George Russell isn't. George Russell is behind Charles Leclerc. And you can see just how tricky it is just to hang on through turn 3 and then through this S's section. Slalom skiing, uphill side. Looking at that Ferrari ahead of him, though, it's not got the most stable rear end, I
was about to say the Ferrari slide. The Ferrari, already a stop on the soft tires. That didn't last very long.
Yeah, that was a gamble they took from the back of the grid, and the soft tyres lasting about 10 laps.
To go to the end of the race now, maybe?
Possible.
Anyway, we're looking at the Ferrari. You could see it was moving around, sliding around, heating up the tires. That's not a good sign for the longer run, but you could also tell that Russell had a much tighter line. He would back off a little bit so he could have a tighter exit and get on the gas better.
He's keeping Charles Leclerc very interested in what is Leclerc's 150th Grand Prix, is George Russell. He's picked up a couple of podiums so far this season, podiums for him in successive races for the first time since Holland and Italy in 2022. By the way, George Russell has never finished on the podium 3 races in a row.
These shifts are so bad. What have we done to them? It's been at the start, it's been now.
Okay, can you be a bit more specific as to where it is? I'll try out.
Yeah, the same I've been talking about all the time.
Okay.
Not just Max Verstappen who's having problems with his gear shifts in this race, and Alex Albon a little bit exasperated because he feels that he's been sending the message through loud and clear and it's not being heard so far this weekend. Beautiful aerial view from the helicam. Haven't had a helicam here for 30 years, but we have this year, and we can see how George Russell closing in on Charles Leclerc through that S's seems to have much better grip. Meanwhile, Lando Norris, you'll see, has got the fastest lap of the race. It was only by a few hundredths to Max Verstappen, but is he now starting to find a little bit more pace? And through this lap, he's a couple of tenths faster in the first sector.
They always play like this. They get a little bit closer, suddenly they overheat the tires, drop back, and they play this yo-yo game. Listen, we've been hearing quite a few drivers now complain about the op shifts, and I wonder, you know, the way they are set up, everything needs to be perfect. Right now, it's a little bit slippery. They get a little bit of wheel spin. Could it be related to that?
Anthony Davidson at Sky Race Control. I'm just seeing, Anthony, on the radio at McLaren, bit of tyre chat between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And Piastri saying that his rears are becoming a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, it's, you know, it will be eventually a bit more of a rear limitation for all of these drivers. The rears just starting to degrade more and more. But they're going into uncharted territory here, aren't they, Crofty? They haven't done enough long runs at all to see where the tyres are going to go. Combined with that fact that we've had a lot of rain, it's washed away any rubber that was already down. Thanks to all of these grass fires we've been having all the way through free practices and all the red flags, they're just, like I say, they're going into the unknown here. So who knows what's going to happen to the tyre degradation and the balance, more importantly.
It's a very good point, and not just the grass fires, of which there have been several, but Jack Doohan's crash as well, and they all lost a lot of time during FP2. Doesn't look like the pit crew at Mercedes are unduly concerned about a pit stop any time in the near future. They looked as relaxed as most people back in the UK are, I'm sure, at nearly 25 past 6 on a Sunday morning.
Well, not much action now, but I'm sure it will change at some point once the pit stop wave starts.
Yes. Oscar Piastri, meanwhile, is the new holder of the fastest lap, as Norris takes off another tenth of Max Verstappen's lead, and Piastri starts to move that little bit closer. And if the tyres do grain up in these colder conditions, can you drive through that graining phase and get rid of some of that bobbling on the surface?
It's been a tough thing to do on the Pirelli. Most of the times, once it starts graining, it just never stops. But we've had drivers who suddenly have cleansed their tires and pick up speed like as if it was new rubber.
Yeah, the cleansing process. When will it begin? Piastri continues to make inroads into Lando Norris's advantage. Charles Leclerc continues to be under pressure from George Russell as down the straight comes the Ferrari and the Mercedes. I dare say Russell needs to be 2 or 3 tenths closer to that Ferrari to make a move into turn 1. That is the battle at the moment for 4th place, lap 13 of 53 here at Suzuka. Good morning to you all back in the UK and the Republic of Ireland. If you're waking up to this Japanese Grand Prix where Max Verstappen has led from the start, the two McLarens have dropped back in the last few laps. They've started to make more inroads.
No sign of graining on any compound. This is a rear thermal limiting race.
Thermal limiting race. It's cold, Ted, and the tyres might get a bit cold as well.
Thermal limiting, what? Well, surely he's talking about the tyres not overheating, no?
Well,
or is he not getting enough heat into it? But in any case, what we're seeing here is the advantage of being on pole position, because at the moment, McLaren don't have an answer for Verstappen's speed. They're talking about tyres here and there and thermal limitations, Crofty, but even though Piastri's just set the fastest lap of the race, they are not getting close to Max Verstappen. This is the advantage, I think. We're seeing how these cars are just affected, really badly affected if they're behind the pole sitter. The advantage of clean air, Max is enjoying that at the moment.
Well, he certainly is. He was about 2.1 seconds clear of Lando Norris 3 laps ago. That gap has come to just under 1.9 now. The one who is making a move, he's known as family watching on in the back of the garage, and looks like he's got his Sky Go working there as well to see the race. But Oscar Piastri is the one that's making the big moves here in the top 3.
He's got speed, but right now, you know, what's interesting is that the limit is thermal. It's heating. Don't overheat your tire, which means they could do the whole race probably on one set of tires. There's no wear issue. There's no graining. It's really don't overheat your tires, because that kills them. They never come back from that. But now as McLaren, the key is to play as a team. One driver should hit the tires to try the undercut, but the other one should be saving his tires. But then what would Red Bull do? Hit Max and cover the undercut, or stay on with the other McLaren on track?
Trouble with that, by working for the team to try and take the win away from Red Bull, you might be doing yourself a disadvantage in terms of your individual race.
Yeah, but you don't know how Red Bull will react, so it's a 50-50.
It's
better having a 50-50 than a 0.
But so you're a driver. Put yourself in the driver's position right now, and it's like, right, okay, we're going to push and we're going to go for the undercut, and it might work, it might not. Do you just do that because the team tell you, or do you think, hang on a minute, I've got my own race, my own strategy, my own plans here?
Unless you know that by not doing that, you won't even get a chance at winning. That might give you a chance at winning or not. There's a risk, but at least you might go for that win.
Lap 14 of 53. Through the chicane we go. Lando Norris and then Oscar Piastri. And if they could just hunt out a few little puddle patches that are still there, that might help with any overheating that might be going on with those regions.
It's not big enough.
Come on, every little helps.
Yeah, it's minute. It's tiny. But right now, Leclerc has lost pace a little bit, and he's the one slowing down the drivers behind. That's allowing Hamilton with his hard tires to stay in contact.
Yeah, George Russell has just dropped back a bit from Charles Leclerc as well. Kimi Antonelli is a fair bit behind his teammate, about 2.5 seconds when they last crossed the line. Isaac Hadjar could be an interesting one in that top 7, and that he's running the medium tyre. Lewis Hamilton, sorry, the interesting one, that he's running the hard tyre. He should go that little bit longer and maybe try and gain a bit of track position as a result of that. Albon and Behrman can complete the top 10 that are separated by 18 seconds here at the moment, which, given how competitive the field is at the moment, is actually quite a big spread, I'd have thought. Gap all the way down to Lance Stroll, who is the only driver to have pitted so far, is 56 seconds for the field.
And Stroll is not picking up any time with his hard tires, which is a bit surprising. They're much newer than the drivers ahead of him, so you would expect him to be catching up to the back of the field right now.
Does that suggest that warming up the tyres is not the easiest thing to do? Straight out the box?
He's been at it for a few laps. Just lack of pace at this point with the hard tire for him, because if you look at the whole field, there is no gap. Everyone is following. It's one big bus line.
Lance Stroll, the most experienced Canadian driver in Formula One, the second most experienced driver, is sat alongside me, and the only one with a world title, Jack Villeneuve. So, you know, you still got bragging rights for the moment on that one.
Oh yeah, yes. It's good to have those rights, yes.
That's the most important rights, I'm sure. Yuki Tsunoda, with his lowest ever start at Suzuka, wants to get some overtaking done, and bit by bit, in his new RB21 Rebel car, he is gaining on Pierre Gasly in front. Gasly's teammate, Jack Doohan, has come in for a change of tyres. Here he is, just making his way into his pit box now. That's the hard tyre going on, no surprises there. Doohan started on the soft and lasted a bit longer than he has
16 laps, huh? That's not so bad. One thing we didn't consider is that Tsunoda, with a lot more downforce than his teammate, burns more fuel, which means more fuel at the start of the race. Not a difference at the end, but more fuel at the start of the race.
Is that offset by picking up a tow behind other cars and Verstappen having to drive through, punch a hole in the clean air all the time? Or
No, more fuel is just never good, basically. And the high downforce means he has to hustle the car around a bit more, drive more aggressively. And it's not really paying off yet.
No, it's this could be a slow burner, this race. And one of strategic advantage gained by those in the mission controls back at the factory and the strategists on the pit wall here at the racetrack. One of the closest battles is this one, Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly. Tsunoda never shy about attacking in his junior career and also in his career in F1 so far. It's not quite within range yet, as Carlos Sainz has a little lock-up going into the chicane. Sainz behind Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls, and that won't have got him any closer at that particular moment.
Yeah, but what was interesting is it felt like once he cut the chicane, he wasn't completely off the throttle, as if he didn't want the engine braking or battery recharge to lock the rear wheels.
Riding on board now with Yuki Tsunoda, and a reminder that if you're watching back at home and you want to ride on board with the drivers, you can do so. You need your Sky Sports app, your Sky Sports login, and the interactive button on your remote control if you're on Sky Stream and Sky Q, Sky Glass, or even Now. This moment now for Yuki Tsunoda needs addressing by about 4/10 when he gets to the DRS zone to try and be in with a chance of an overtake on Pierre Gasly. He was disqualified, of course, from China after his car was a kilo underweight. It was finished 11th on the road in both Grand Prix so far in 2024, which is always an unfortunate position because it's the first one to send you home completely pointless, which the disqualification would have done to him anyway in China. Now, Tsunoda has got a little bit closer. Can he get a nice slipstream here, bring that gap down between himself and Pierre Gasly to have a go into the main straight?
You can see with his high downforce, even with a toe on that long stretch, he never gets close enough to then be in a position coming out of the chicane to then attack.
Here we go. Down the main straight. Lando Norris now 1.7 seconds behind Max Verstappen. Piastri's dropped back a bit from his teammate, trying to protect his tyres. And into turn one, Tsunoda is...
Lando, our main time loss to Verstappen is the hairpin, but you and Oscar are similar.
And he's coming into the hairpin now, Lando Norris. Is it a case of just not braking late enough, and that's why he's losing time, or braking too late, going too wide?
Or different lines. It's an odd corner because nobody goes to the apex. They all wait until the car slows down enough to turn, and we saw that Verstappen goes down into the corner very early.
He was braking very late in places on his pole lap yesterday, Max.
Box to overtake Verstappen. Box to overtake Verstappen.
Right, in which case then, let's see what's going on. I'm looking to the left and I can't quite see any activity in the McLaren garage as yet. Are they going to bring him in, or is this a dummy ploy to try and take Red Bull into an early pit stop by McLaren?
It might mean do the opposite.
Well, here we go. They're out
And you
in
were
the
right.
pit lane. They're out in the pit lane, and Norris is told to stay out. So it was the dummy.
Yeah, but the dummies don't seem to work anymore. They're used to it.
Carlos Sainz, by the way, we can see him now behind Liam Lawson, has been noted for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. That's when he went through the chicane. 10 to you.
It's a couple of laps too soon to make the first pit stop. Just in case you're putting your hard tyres on, you really want them to go from at least lap 19, probably lap 20, to the end of the 53 laps race. So I can see what McLaren were doing, but if they do that, then they might leave themselves vulnerable at the end of the race. Just a quick one on Mercedes. They initially thought that Leclerc was holding them up, Crofty. Team radio.
And we'll keep on extending. No gaps yet at the back.
But they feel now that actually Leclerc and George Russell have quite similar lap times, and that maybe that being behind that Ferrari of Leclerc has maybe taken a bit out of George's tyres.
Listen, we just had a super important message from Ferrari, no gap at the back. So they're all trying to see, okay, we need to stop, we want to start undercutting, but if we do, we'll pit out in the middle of traffic.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. That's what this race now is giving us on the strategy of the teams. That never happens. There's always gaps.
And mate, this pace is really strong. Keep it up.
And I was about to say, Lando Norris, whether he's coming in or staying out, is certainly pushing on. Another new fastest lap of the race, and this time about 4/10 faster than Max Verstappen. George Russell is told to come into the pits.
He's found a gap.
They have found a gap there. So you lose about 23 seconds with your pit stop. What you want to do is come out a few seconds behind whoever the car is in front and not get stuck in that turbulent wake. Verstappen's enjoying clean air out in front. Mercedes want George Russell to enjoy some clean air as well. Pit stop was 2.3 seconds, not bad at all. He should come out.
You want me to push him up? Yeah, we can push him, Max.
Behind Yuki Tsunoda, and he does. So if Norris is pitting, now Verstappen is trying to respond and just asking the question, do you mind if I do that? Is it going to upset the tyres? Is it part of our strategy? And he's given the loosening of the reins.
It's funny because it needed the driver to ask. Normally, it's the engineers. They come, okay, push, don't push. It's not the driver that feels, hey, maybe it's time to push. What do you think? Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead. If you think it's right. It shows the power he has inside the team.
Race control for us this afternoon, Anthony Davidson.
Yeah, so Oscar Piastri has been on the radio to his engineer saying it's starting to slide a bit more now, both axles, and he's just starting to drop back, isn't he, from Lando Norris? I don't know if that's intentional to try and stay in a bit of clearer air and fight later on, but he was just expressing his concern slightly that the sliding's happening both front end and rear end.
And he is told that it might be a good time to come into the pits. And guess what, Jack? This time, it isn't a dummy call. He is coming in. So he was half a second down on Lando Norris on the last lap. So that doesn't surprise me that he's going to make his pit stop now.
Will we see a repeat of Hungary, but the other way around?
Right, Piastri stops then. This might also be to cover off George Russell, who, remember, has pitted for Mercedes. You can see him right at the back, and the gap just in front of Fernando Alonso. So back into 9th place, hard tyres, they hope, towards the end of the race. But now, to get out ahead of Fernando Alonso was the key point for McLaren. They didn't want to be stuck behind the Aston Martin.
And it looks like there's no time game by stopping early.
But I think they had to cover off George Russell because he was starting to lose time, Piastri.
Correct.
The last thing he wanted.
Yeah, but what I mean is Russell did not really gain any time on even though he pitted a lap early.
Yeah, he's behind Yuki Tsunoda and has DRS when he goes down the main straight again. You might have just seen there, Carlos Sainz, no further investigation for leaving the track, gaining an advantage. So we've had Russell stop, we've had Piastri stop, and out in front the gap, still about 1.5 seconds between Verstappen and Norris. Norris was pushing, Verstappen has now responded. 10 to you.
Piastri's stop there, they're trying to get Verstappen in for a stop, and Red Bull are in the pits.
Right, not just Red Bull, but Ferrari and McLaren as well. Verstappen is coming in, Lando Norris is coming in, and also Charles Leclerc. So the top three on the road, as it were, are all making their stops. So this is where the pit crew can make a huge difference with a speedy stop. And that looked a little bit unsteady for Lando Norris, but it was a second faster than Max Verstappen when he was stationary. Oh, and there's Norris onto the grass. Max Verstappen stays ahead of Lando Norris. He gained a second, did Norris, on Verstappen in the pit stops. Norris for one moment thought, you know what, there's an overtake chance here, but it all went a little bit wrong for him. Fortunately, for his sake, he is still ahead of Behrman.
He forced me up. They were on it.
Now let's just see that again, Jacques. I don't think we caught the full bit, but were they side by side coming out of the pit lane?
But in that case, it would be an unsafe release. So gotta be careful with those situations.
Kimi Antonelli takes over the lead of this race. For the first time in his career, the young rookie leads the race from Lewis Hamilton in second. But this is what happened now with Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. McLaren at the end of the pit lane, really good stop. And there's Verstappen just coming into view. Oh no. Was it ever going to work for Lando Norris? Verstappen keeps the same line here, doesn't veer over to the right, and he's looking in the mirror.
He drove himself into the grass.
Yeah, we know the game, Max. As you are.
He didn't do anything wrong there. He was on his line. I think Norris was hoping to get a penalty, but ultimately Norris should not have been released because Max was there. That's the first thing.
But right at the end of the pit lane, it was safe to do so because... Well,
doesn't matter. You're not supposed to release a car when there's another one in the fast lane.
Yeah.
That's all.
We'll see if the stewards take any action on that one. Norris is still ahead of Verstappen. The two McLarens are still behind.
Saw me alongside. I was easily alongside.
We're on it.
Norris is ahead of Piastri, still behind Verstappen. And I think those messages, Ted, on the team radio are as much for race control of the stewards as they are for the benefit of the driver and the team.
Yeah, but you can't ask Max to suddenly move out.
Exactly.
Well, he's never going to move out, even if you ask him or not. Ted, to you.
Yeah, exactly, because Max couldn't go left because then he would have got a penalty for breaking the line on the pit exit line. So Max had to stay where he was. Lando blended out like he should have done.
Also, he pressed the pit limiter off too early. There's no way that mistake on.
How can he tell? How can he tell from there?
Well, he might have done, but that all started, Crofty, with a slow stop for Red Bull Racing.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get a replay. Let's get it. That's just the release. We need to see the whole pit stop for Verstappen of Red Bull Racing because he lost a good second in that pit stop. I was watching it, Crofty, and I remarked, I immediately said, that's a slow pit stop for Verstappen. Only a second, that's all it took for Norris suddenly to be on it.
Yeah, I thought Norris lost a tenth or two as well with the left rear. I don't think that's an unsafe release, Jack, because Lando Norris could have backed off, slotted behind him and not gone onto the grass. And I don't think Max Verstappen forced him onto the grass either.
No, at that point, Norris should have backed off. The unsafe release is just when the mechanic lets the drivers go and if there's another car in the fast lane. That's about it. There was no danger there because they're the last car anyway.
That could be the most exciting thing, or definitely is the most exciting thing we've had in this race so far, and I hope we get some more excitement before the end of it. Slow stop for Ollie Behrman, who was in the points when he pitted. Yuki Tsunoda has come into the pits too.
You know, the team's notes is that there was no gain with an undercut, so why wouldn't you leave Norris out an extra lap?
Well, I think they
because normally if you pit together, you will not get out ahead unless the other team makes a mistake, which is very rare.
I get what you're saying. Maybe Lando Norris's tyres were such that he had to come in, otherwise they'd start to drop off the cliff a little bit, and he
That's a lot of maybes.
I'm not a strategist, as I've proved on many occasions in the past. George Russell's currently in 10th, behind Fernando Alonso. Alonso hasn't pitted yet. Albon hasn't pitted. Hadjar hasn't pitted. Hamilton hasn't pitted. And Kimi Antonelli leads Lewis Hamilton. The youngest driver in the race is leading the 40-year-old Lewis Hamilton here. Wow.
and then Isaac Hadjar at 20 years old. Hamilton with a couple of rookies around him. And here comes George Russell. Towards the chicane we go. Which way is there a gap? Fernando Alonso positions his Aston Martin in exactly the right place to show there is no gap there. But with DRS on, he dives into the pit lane now. Frustrated George Russell no more as he makes way and Russell moves into 9th, make that 8th because Albon pitted too.
You see, Russell lost quite a bit by being the first one to pit. He got out in traffic. It didn't pay off. And then what did the team do? They split their drivers. One is still in the track. He's leading the race. You have to split your drivers when you have two in the front if you want to actually achieve something. And McLaren did not do that.
Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly pits 2. Antonelli's advantage is 4 seconds. He's on the medium tyre, Hamilton on the hard tyre. And that incident involving Verstappen and Norris has been
Honestly,
noted.
you guys make absolutely no sense.
Okay.
Like, ridiculous.
Right. Berman has pitted.
Yeah, but pit before then.
Trust me, it was worse before.
Well, he hasn't got all the data to hand as to where the gaps are, Alex Albon, but he feels that he should have stayed out that much longer. And what they've done is not come in soon enough and then compounded the error by not staying out and trying to switch the strategy a bit. What's happening with McLaren is that not only are they still behind Max Verstappen, but Verstappen is lapping increasingly faster than Lando Norris, about a 10th faster than Oscar Piastri. He's on these hard compound tyres, once again showing that the Red Bull is a bit of a different car. In comes Isaac Hadjar from the Racing Bulls. No further investigation, Verstappen and Norris, for that pit lane incident. Ted, down to you.
Quite right. Right decision
I agree.
on that one. Gasly had a really slow stop, Crofty. Lost 2.5 seconds. Is now behind Dua, his teammate.
He is that. Thank you for spotting that one, Ted Kravitz. So Isaac Hadjar comes out now behind Alex Albon and in front of Ollie Behrman. So Albon might not have liked necessarily the strategy that was going on, but I just wonder, is it going to help him in the long run? That's Esteban Ocon right behind the Racing Bulls of Isaac Hadjar.
Yeah, now we can see the difficulty of warming up the tires coming out of the pits, and that's why the undercut has not really worked for anyone.
Correct. It's Sainz in the Williams ahead of Isaac Hadjar because he hasn't pitted yet. Neither has Lawson, Ocon or Bortoletto. And to you.
Yes, we're looking at this fight here. You've got Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls. So he's racing Lewis Hamilton. Now offset, of course, with the pit stop. Hamilton, meanwhile, is reported... we're just seeing this lock up there from Sainz again in that last chicane. He's really struggling, isn't he, on the brakes, particularly with the brakes in this new car to him in the Williams. But yeah, back to this fight with Hadjar versus Hamilton. Hadjar had the speed. He'd been harassing Lewis. Obviously, they were on different tyres there. Lewis on the hard tyre. He's reported that he's still happy with the car, happy with the tyres, but so has race leader at the moment, Kimi Antonelli. He's reported back to Bono, saying that he's happy with his set of medium tyres, taking them further into the race.
I think he's doing a super job at the moment, Kimi Antonelli, in preserving those tyres. Started 6th in this race. Get a safety car for whatever incident in the next few laps. He'll be in prime
Okay,
position.
Lando, they said no further action on the pit exit. Just means you'll have to overtake him on track. Doing a good job with the tyres. Better job than he is.
He probably needed a couple of laps to clean all the grass off his tyres as well.
If you look at the race now, the only intelligent teams so far, well, Hamilton on hard tires, normal, they didn't pit him, but Antonelli, his lap times is only 6/10 of a second slower than Verstappen and Norris on new hard. That's why would you stop Norris when your teammate has already stopped? Why want to take a gamble? You have two drivers out there. It's as if they're trying to not win. You need a winning attitude when you want to win.
It does seem a little, what's the phrase, counterintuitive to do exactly what your teammate has done when trying to get close to the Red Bull on track is proving something problematic. So you might as well try something different with a pit stop strategy just to try and upset the apple cart a little bit.
You need to want to win. You cannot just be on the defensive.
Yeah. I mean, McLaren freely admit that throughout the season they will make the odd mistake, and I'm sure every team will make a mistake in the 24-race Grand Prix, and it's how you learn from those mistakes and move on afterwards. But you're saying, what's the tennis race? Unforced error?
Yes, completely. Panicking, being afraid of doing what might be right.
Alex Albon into the chicane has Gabriel Bortoleto ahead of him. Bortoleto hasn't stopped yet. Albon has, and he's relegated down into 13th place as a result. We were just on board there with the youngest driver ever to lead a Formula One Grand Prix. Meanwhile, here comes Alex Albon, who led for a lap or two in China last time out, and is now up to 12th place with that move on Gabriel Bortoleto, the rookie in the Sauber. So Lando Norris was 1.4 seconds behind Max Verstappen when they pitted. And after all the kerfuffling that has gone on since the pit stop at the end of the last lap, well, currently now finds himself 2 seconds behind Max Verstappen. So he's got another 6 tenths to try and reduce the arrears to what it was, and then another 1.4 seconds to try and get level with him. We're on board now with the Red Bull of Yuki Tsunoda. This is another driver caught out, under braking,
and he did lose time. He did lose time through the chicane, and well, Hamilton's just picking up the pace record in the first sector, so his hard tires now are working quite well.
Yeah, it does seem to take a couple of laps to warm up those hard compound tires.
Yes, Hamilton is on very uniform, and they still have pace.
Yeah. That is how it looks. Very close to a race-ending incident, but it was more Lando being released and the Red Bull being alongside than anything Max Verstappen was doing. The stewards decided that there's no further investigation of that.
Right call.
And also, for the second time, for Carlos Sainz for leaving the track and gaining an advantage, and he's under pressure now from Isaac Hadjar with DRS in the Racing Bulls. Hadjar stopped a few laps ago. He's been on these hard tyres for the last 3 laps. Let's go to Anthony Davidson.
Yeah, Crofty just been listening to Bono on the radio to Antonelli, talking about his old driver, Lewis Hamilton. Says, Kimi, this is really good, keep it up. You're keeping pace with Lewis, lap times look competitive. Seems so weird hearing Bono talking about his old driver like that. Now a rival.
And now a rival. Let's just have a little look at Alex Albon. It's Esteban Ocon in the Haas. So he got past Bortoleto, and then a lap later, he's managed to get past Esteban Ocon too.
That was a very late move from Ocon. Too late.
Just feisty defense. And still Isaac Hadjar right on his tail. I'm glad we're watching Max Verstappen on board with him at the moment. He, in effect, is the net race leader here because the cars in front haven't pitted yet. And the first of those cars is Lewis Hamilton, and he's probably starting to get affected a little bit by the dirty air coming off the back of that Ferrari. This might be the first time that Verstappen's encountering those problems during the course of this race. Which way is Carlos Sainz going to defend against Isaac Hadjar here? He defends to the left of the track and keeps the Racing Bull at bay. Hadjar, though, is going to come back for a little bit more. Sainz on older tyres, medium tyres, that he's run from the start of this race, goes towards the inside. Hadjar goes around the outside. He was a little bit uncertain, but knew he had the pace to clear that Williams.
Oh, he did. It was close, but Sainz did not give a clear message of where he was going, which was the risk. But as we've seen, Verstappen, even if he gets close to Hamilton has enough pace that he will probably stay behind.
Prove there that he's got the determination as Isaac Hadjar after his seatbelt pressure problems of yesterday and driving through the pain barrier in qualifying. That will certainly put a smile on his face. Important move on Alex Albon because his fight today, Hadjar, was with Lewis Hamilton, and he needed to clear that Williams as quickly as he possibly could. Moves himself up into 9th spot, and there's a lock-up from Hamilton in front of Max Verstappen, and that is a lock-up that will do Max Verstappen an awful lot of good. Hamilton disappears into the pits anyway, but Verstappen needed to clear the Ferrari of Hamilton as soon as he could. With Hamilton locking up and now pitting, he's got a bit more free air as Piastri now sets the fastest lap of the race. He's only a second behind Lando Norris. Norris is about 1.5 seconds behind Max Verstappen. Head down to you.
Great pit stop from Ferrari for Lewis Hamilton, so he'll clear Hadjar pretty easily now that Hadjar was stuck behind Carlos Sainz in the Williams, so no problem for Hamilton. They waited as long as they could, Crofty. The safety car never came. It was worth a wait, but yeah, amazing how Kimi Antonelli has outlasted Hamilton on a harder tyre. Great laps from Kimi Antonelli. This is brilliant stuff.
Absolutely. Took the lead on lap 22. We're on lap 31 of this race, and he's still out in the lead. Verstappen about 4/10 quicker than Antonelli on the last lap. We're going to watch him lock up again from Lewis Hamilton. Came into the pits and got back out ahead of Isaac Hadjar, who was the driver who started one place behind in the grid.
And Antonelli can wait. He had a big gap over Lewis Hamilton, so he can do a lap or two and still come out of the pits ahead of him.
And that's what it looked like from the rear of Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari. So, as we watch on board now with the Williams, another lock up there. Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz. Well, actually, it was Sainz letting Albon through. They're on a completely different strategy. Finally, Kimi Antonelli can come into the pits on lap 32. So through goes Verstappen, through goes Norris, through goes Piastri. Charles Leclerc should go through as well. George Russell still behind Charles Leclerc. Where does Antonelli come back out to? It was a slowish pit stop, so will come out behind George Russell and back in the 6th place where he was before everything started swapping around.
Yeah, because even Lewis being on the medium tires, where you think, okay, that tire can warm up enough, he can get closer. No, that outlap just doesn't pay off. So anyone stopping first doesn't gain any time, even loses some.
Right, 32 laps, well, 32nd lap we're on. Here's Jacques Villeneuve. Now that Antonelli's pitted, now that Hamilton's pitted, and we've got Verstappen, Norris and Piastri back as the top three again. And let's just focus on this for a little bit, because Norris, bit by bit, lap by lap, has been gaining on Max Verstappen. And we're back to where we were at the start of this race, but now we're on the hard compound tyre, and we're racing to the end, and there shouldn't be any more pit stops. And Norris has got to keep pushing and try and find that pace.
The hard tires makes it a little bit easier to follow, to not overheat it, but still, Max is a quick driver. He doesn't normally make mistakes. He's quick in the straight line. I don't see how Norris can now overtake him. And he's also had to hit his tires to get closer.
Please swap out of turn 14. 22 laps to go. From getting stuff and letting pass.
And that's Haas just making sure that Behrman, who is on a different strategy to Esteban Ocon, doesn't get held up. As a result, he also had a slower pit stop, did Ollie Behrman when he came in. Watching Alex Albon now behind Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls. Lawson hasn't actually pitted yet. He's another one who's actually not doing a bad job going longer on these medium tyres. Through goes Albon on Liam Lawson. They're trying to hang out for a safety car. The strategy at Racing Bulls. So we just heard there Haas, Jacques Villeneuve, engineering the swap over with Ocon and Behrman. Ocon's coming into the pits. Do McLaren do a bit of a swap over here and say, right, Oscar, we need you to forget about your tyres for a bit and go off and try and get Max Verstappen and put him under pressure, because Lando is getting close but not quite close enough.
So we're going to swap places with Jack into turn 1 this time, please. So we'll swap places with Jack into turn 1.
There's lots of swaps going on here, knowing that there probably isn't the danger from Charles Leclerc to take that podium away.
I don't see a swap happening there. Norris is quick. He's a bit quicker in the race than Piastri is, and he's been able to get closer to Verstappen, so he will be able to put the pressure on himself.
Well, he was a 10th quicker than Verstappen on the last lap. Thanks for that, says Pierre Gasly. Piastri, though, is quicker and a bit quicker than Lando Norris on that last lap. Look, 1.6 seconds the gap. Now you see how much closer Piastri's got to Norris.
Yeah,
so they need to do something to put pressure on Verstappen if they're going to win this race.
The team cannot do it. It's down to the drivers now. What they can rely on is Verstappen with the less downforce. That's a price to pay when you're harder tire. On the medium tire, it's not as costly, but the harder the tire, the less grip you have, the more the low downforce will be a negative.
See, there's a long way to go in this race, but as it stands at the moment, Verstappen has got the luxury of managing his tyres, nice clean air in front of him. This is George Russell. Not going to do that too often. His teammate Kimi Antonelli behind him and setting a new fastest lap of the race. But Verstappen can control things quite nicely, unless Norris gets closer and puts him under pressure, or Piastri is allowed to get closer and put him under pressure. He's got this race in the bag. You would say.
You would
would say that space got clean air, but at some point there will be lapping cars, I would guess. So that might be in the wrong place. That wouldn't be clean air anymore. Norris has been able in the past to put Verstappen under pressure. We've seen it, so why not today? Look, he's close enough that Verstappen knows he cannot go to sleep. He has to keep on pushing. And drivers have been making mistakes locking up on hard tires, not really on medium.
That is true. 3 seconds separating then the top 3 in this race. Ted, let's head down to
I know they're towards the back, but watch out for Liam Lawson and Carlos Sainz for the rest of the race, because they both pitted and they both put it on. Lawson certainly put in the soft tyres.
And Sainz has as well.
But I saw Sainz with the soft tyres as well, even though on my computer Lawson is showing up on the hard tyres. I just want to double check that, but I'm pretty sure I saw Lawson on the softs, the medium to soft for both of them, and that's going to make them quick as long as the soft tyre lasts. Because they've got to do what, 19 laps on it properly?
Yeah.
They only lasted 10 laps at the beginning of the race with Lance Stroll, even though, of course, that was on heavier fuel.
Tell you what, we'll watch that battle. We'll also watch Lewis Hamilton gaining on Kimi Antonelli too. And that's the Haas of Ollie Behrman.
That was almost a front wing there.
That was almost a front wing. Ollie Behrman just had to back out of that one. For one brief millisecond, there was a gap there.
A gap that was going too close. Because Behrman was never next to Sainz. He was only ever at the rear wheels, and that's not an overtaking move. In overtaking moves, you have to be at least side by side with the other driver.
I'm just thinking back to previous races here over the years. Ayrton Senna would have said the move was on there into the chicane, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but normally drivers didn't just stop at the rear wheel. They would always go. Your front wheels had to be by the other driver's helmet, so you would get an idea that you were there.
Good point. Jack Villeneuve with us for this Japanese Grand Prix. And if you're just waking up, back in the UK, we're on lap 35. Max Verstappen leads. He's started out on pole. He headed the field to the first rounds of pit stops. He and Lando Norris stopped at exactly the same time. Charles Leclerc as well. And then the stop that was a second slower than Lando Norris. They both came out side by side. Norris had to take to the grass to avoid crashing into Max Verstappen, who did nothing wrong, and the stewards agreed with that too.
Max, just to confirm, the message wasn't clear already. We are happy for you to push from here.
And that is about as close as Verstappen and Norris have got in this race when they came out of the pits. It's a second and a half the gap now, and Verstappen is allowed to push that little bit more to preserve that lead. Piastri is still gaining a bit on his teammate in third.
But was that a message to demoralize McLaren?
Possibly. I'm sure it would. I'm sure it would. McLaren who say, by the way, you know, we might have a pace advantage. Certainly out front we've got a pace advantage, but it's not as significant as people think. With the Williams of Carlos Sainz here on the soft compound tyre. Sainz is making progress and starting his climb up the S's ahead of Liam Lawson down in 16th place currently, but can he get those soft tyres to the end, and can they prove to be something of an advantage?
Worth a try, because otherwise it's a pointless race anyway, finishing outside of the top 10, so might as well try it.
Carlos Sainz setting a blistering first section, actually, 31.7 on this particular lap. So Verstappen, Norris and Piastri. Charles Leclerc running in fourth, where he started. George Russell currently running in fifth, where he started, as is Kimi Antonelli, who might be coming under pressure from Lewis Hamilton, although he's starting to actually move ahead of Hamilton and increase that advantage just a little bit more. Isaac Hadjar runs eighth ahead of Albon and Behrman. Antonelli did lead the race, becoming the youngest driver to lead a Formula One Grand Prix. Verstappen, though, after Antonelli pitted, has taken back the lead on this race. Just get the feeling with lap times here, it's going to be cat and mouse for
I really like to go way up slow, mate. To made 9 and 13, 14.
Okay, but how much?
Yeah, tell you. Yeah, 1, 10th, 8 and 9.
And is that because he's now on the mediums and the hard tyre was a better tyre for Lewis in the Ferrari?
It's more to know, should he be pushing more, which corner should he concentrate on. It's always good to know what's happening with the other drivers, the other cars. It helps you figure out where you're already on the edge or not.
Oscar Piastri is going to be within DRS range of his two drivers are free to race here and free to go at it.
As long as they keep the papaya rules.
Well, yeah, papaya rules, don't take each other out, basically. Or if you are going to take each other out, make sure it's for dinner, not in a race.
Correct. But look at it. Norris is still close enough to Verstappen. He's closed the gap again. So even though Verstappen can push, he doesn't have extra pace.
Top 6 currently in grid order, which is in the history of Formula One at a permanent racetrack has never happened before. Monaco, Singapore, Monaco 2024 are the only times that we've ever had the top 6 finish in the same order they started. But at a permanent racetrack, that has never happened before. That is a stat that I wasn't necessarily expecting, Ted Kravitz, but it just shows how difficult overtaking is becoming today.
Well, in general, with these cars now, and, you know, you talk about papaya rules, Crofty. If McLaren have got any juice in them papayas, they've got to start squeezing them now, because Max is absolutely equal to anything that Lando and Oscar can throw at him at the moment. Same lap times, 1:31.7. Verstappen, 1:31.7 Norris, 1:31.6 Piastri, but not able to close. So McLaren running out of laps really quickly here to do anything about trying to win this race. Just a quick one on Yuki Tsunoda. I've been following his lap times, Crofty. They're not great. He's about 5 seconds off a point, which is currently held by Ollie Behrman, and making very little impact on Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin ahead of him. So that early promise of Yuki Tsunoda this weekend in the Red Bull not showing in the race at all, sadly.
Yeah, Ollie Behrman in 10th in a Haas that has had upgrades fast-tracked to the racetrack. I was talking to Ayo Komatsu, their team principal, and he was saying, look, it's been a lot of intensive work since Australia, and the disappointment there to find out why the car was so bad there, accept that we've got an issue, and then find a solution to it. He said, I'm really proud of the team for the way they've responded and reacted. China was absolutely magnificent.
We suggest engine braking +1.
Yes, you already told me. I don't do it for a reason.
Is that a rear brakes issue?
Either a rear brakes issue or maybe they want more engine regen. But then that would create an issue at the end of braking into the chicane. So Leclerc saying he doesn't do it for a reason. It's because he doesn't like the balance with it. And very nice exchange in between, not overly friendly.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it wasn't my idea to do it. You know, yeah. I know why we're doing it here. Hulkenberg on the back of Jack Doohan. Yeah, to go back to Haas, more upgrades to come in a few races' time. But they've halfway addressed their issues, and to get a point out of this one, I think will go down very, very nicely at Banbury and back in the US.
It's been a surprising team. They've got more points than we would have imagined in 3 races, and now Behrman on this tough track, which is also a narrow track, a car track, is in the points.
Yeah, I think Behrman did a super job in qualifying yesterday to get to Q3 for the first time in his Formula One career.
Just tracking potentially incorrect adjust at the stop. Well, not incorrect adjust, it's an issue with the lap.
Okay, so that would be front wing flat?
Front wing flat, that's the only one they can actually adjust, but it doesn't seem to be affecting him very negatively. And Norris had a message saying that his tires were fine, which means he can push, but Piastri is the one putting pressure now.
Well, I did say he's going to be in DRS range in a couple of laps' time, and guess what? He's in DRS range now, is Oscar Piastri. If Lando says his tyres are fine, quite sure what Piastri's going to say about his. Super fine, maybe? Because he's the faster of the 2 McLarens at the moment.
Super fine, but he's pushing. He's really asking a lot from his tyres now, and Norris will have more tyre at the end of the race.
Yes, unless Oscar can get past Lando Norris and charge after Max Verstappen, and the end of the race comes before any trouble with those tyres. That is an unknown. That's why we love live sports. I tell you what, he is going to be pouncing all over Lando Norris at this rate in about 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah, and he's been getting closer down the straight with the toe, even without DRS. He's gained a couple of tenths down the straight. Close now to the last corner. Not close enough.
I'm also going to ask the question. He is the faster of the 2 McLarens.
No.
Do they swap it around to put some pressure on Max?
That would be surprising. When they're second and third, you've got the championship leader in the front. That would be odd.
Well, that's true. Lando Norris would lose the championship lead if he gave up second place and Max Verstappen won this race. But he himself says he's not even thinking about that championship lead.
They all say that, but honestly, it's not believable. Come on.
When did you start thinking about the championship lead in '97?
Even before the first qualifying in Melbourne. All through winter.
You just knew that it could be your year. Jack Villeneuve with us here for this Japanese Grand Prix, which, bar the moment in the pits, has not been the most exciting of Japanese Grand Prix, but they're often slow burners here, and we might yet get a grandstand finish. Norris has picked up the pace a little bit in this latest lap.
Also, the cold conditions actually protect the tires. So in the past, the races have been a bit more difficult, more tire wear, more tire overheating, which we're not getting today.
That's why I said earlier, I'm not quite sure overheating tires was necessarily the issue. The track temperature...
That was the limit, though.
Yeah, the limit. Under 20 degrees now, the track temperature. The rain hasn't come. It's grey skies overhead, but not grey enough, I think, to deposit any wet stuff on the track. Now, Piastri is still about a tenth of a second behind Norris than he was on the previous lap, so we'll get that benefit of DRS, but this straight won't be long enough for him to get level with Norris towards the end of it.
Norris needs to stay that close to Verstappen as well, which means he loses a little bit through all the S's, but he still gets a little bit of a toe that protects him from Piastri.
Can he try and make up the time here? Under late braking, taking a different line? Is he just in that situation where you think, like, anything I do, Max is kind of responding where I can really gain until he starts having problems?
He needs to get close enough to put Max in a mindset of, if I do make a mistake, he will overtake me. And that kind of pressure could push a driver into making a mistake.
Anthony, race control.
Yeah, I think that Lando's intentionally building himself a little bit of a gap here, intentionally building himself a tyre offset, so keeping his tyres in better shape so that he can mount an attack later on. The two McLarens are faster than the Red Bull here. It's impossible to overtake when you're on the same age of tyre. They've been in this situation the whole race. They couldn't build themselves the offset via pit stops because other cars were too close. Sorry, I'm just under this, I'm just listening to Norris saying he's intentionally giving a gap here to Verstappen, and later on he's going to utilise his hard work in saving his tyres to hopefully then have...
If Lando's still saving, I think it should go soon. I think they have the pace to get back.
So it wasn't Lando under it, it was Piastri that was talking to his engineer about Lando. So there we go, that's what's going on here.
Well, that's the question I'm going to ask you both here. If Lando's maintaining that gap to suit himself, that's probably not suiting Oscar, whose tyres are getting more and more chewed up because he's that much closer. So, Shaq first, then Ant. If you were McLaren, would you release Oscar Piastri to put that pressure on Max Verstappen and try and force an issue that Lando Norris could then maybe capitalise on at the end of the race? Shaq, you first.
No, at this point I wouldn't. The speed difference is not enough.
Okay, so this kind of pace to get back.
Okay.
This is the internal messages. It's not sure he's pushing hard, but Lando is also doesn't want to be too close, save his tires, but he also wants to damage Piastri's tires. So he's playing a double game there. Piastri has more pace right now, but will he have
between the McLaren drivers trying to urge each other along. Just keep your head down. Pace is good. You'll find time to the end of it.
What's your take on it, Ant?
I strongly feel that, Lando he's got more in reserve right now. And the thing is, like Christian Horner said at the start of the race, they've got two cars against our one. They can be clever with strategy. They can do things with these two cars. So far, they haven't. They haven't utilised that advantage that they started this race with today, having both cars there. I mean, they've just followed the plan of Red Bull. The problem is for McLaren is that the cars behind are too close as well. They haven't got a comfortable window. I saw he's getting a bit close there, and whether they're going to do a swap around. But let's see if Lando does have any more in the bag. If this is genuine, they better act quickly and swap the cars.
Because otherwise they're going to run out of time to do anything about it. What the top three are doing is pulling away lap by lap from Charles Leclerc in fourth place. He's 10 seconds at the moment behind Oscar Piastri. He's 12 seconds off the lead. George Russell is lapping about the same times as Charles Leclerc. Kimi Antonelli is quicker at the moment than George Russell. He's got that gap down to just under 5 seconds, and he's quicker as well, significantly quicker is Antonelli than Lewis Hamilton, running in 7th on the medium tyres, which do not seem to be working as well for the Ferrari as the hard tyres were at the start. Isaac Hadjar is lapping quicker than Lewis Hamilton, but is a long way off. Alex Albon back up in the points again, and Ollie Behrman holding on to 10th quite comfortably from Fernando Alonso, who's a 10th or 2 away from him in terms of lap times to try and make an impression on the points. Carlos Sainz in 16th is right on the tail of Nico Hülkenberg, has been for a while, and as we go down the straight again, this time I don't think Piastri is as close to Lando Norris as he was before. So has Lando Norris just picked up the pace here, and is this now the start of Lando Norris making the charge? Because he's got rid of Piastri in terms of any DRS threats, and he's got the gap down to now under 1.4 seconds between himself and Max Verstappen.
And Norris just did his best lap of the race right now. Very close to the lap record, so he's got pace, and also he let Piastri work hard at it for 10 laps. Piastri probably used up his tires now, and he won't have the pace to fight Norris for the end of the lap. Well played.
Yeah, well, Piastri was in a situation where he had to start pushing because he was the 3rd car in the train.
And he wanted to pass the message to his team. That he would do as well.
Would you mind him getting out of the way here? Because it's just really hampering my race. But that's what happens when you qualify in 3rd and your teammate is ahead of you. You've kind of lost that right to say, I need to be the car in front on that particular afternoon. Well, Joseph in Team Norris, Tom Stallard in Team Piastri, Lando is kicking into action here and is continuing to kick into action on this lap. 2/10 faster than Max Verstappen through the first part, through that first sector. Out of Spoon Curve we come now, and we'll see what the second sector has done. And also whether Verstappen has much to respond in his Red Bull. And look at that, there's Lance Stroll, who's currently running last in this race, who's looming into view for Max Verstappen because there's going to be some lapping going on. The top 3 matched each other in terms of times through that middle sector of this lap. It was under 1.4 seconds, the gap, as Stroll now moves out of the way, and the gap between Verstappen and Norris now under 1.3 seconds. So it's another 10th in the right direction for Lando Norris, but had they left it too late?
Well, could he have attacked earlier? I was hoping Stroll would wait for the S's, so at least he could bunch them all up together.
You probably weren't the only one on that one. The Lando Norris fans would have been hoping for that as well. Nervy times in the garage. They've done their bits in the pit stops. Now they're trying to see what their driver can do on the track.
It's frustrating for everyone at McLaren. They know they have the better car. They know that they should have arrived here with a front row lockout and finished 1st and 2nd. And that's not going to happen, possibly. And that's not a good way to go back home.
Team that got its 50th 1-2 finish in Constructor Championship history last time out, trying to pick up a win. They haven't had 4 consecutive wins, McLaren, since 2005. They won in Abu Dhabi at the end of last year. They won in Australia. Both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri picked up the win last time out in China. Here on his birthday, he is currently running in 3rd place. Norris is getting ever closer to Max Verstappen in 2nd. Still not quite in DRS range. Piastri is holding on to his teammate, has picked up a couple of tenths on Norris in this middle sector of this lap. He's back in DRS range, and Lando Norris just needs a couple more tenths to start getting the DRS benefit on Max Verstappen. It was 1.3 seconds the lead for Max. It's now 1.2 seconds. If it's a 10th, they're going to run out of time. They need 2 or 3 tenths a lap, faster pace than the Red Bull to try and get this win.
And the DRS would give that couple of tenths. And it might happen very soon.
Yeah, well, Piastri's got it. Norris needs to have a blinding right, left through the S's to try and get within that 1 second margin of Max Verstappen, as Kimi Antonelli sets a fastest lap of this race, half a second quicker than his teammate George Russell, ahead of him in 5th. Could he yet get on terms with Russell by the end of it? Look how close the cars are going through the hairpin. Max could have all this under control underneath the crash helmet and the visor, and could be in complete and utter paradise as far as he's concerned. aiming to become the first driver ever to win 4 consecutive Suzuka Grand Prix. He's taken 4 consecutive poles. He is looking good for a 4th win here, but it's not over yet.
The gap is too small. He cannot lose any focus. He cannot make a tiny mistake. That's the difference. It's not a 5-second gap.
It isn't the 5-second gap. I mean, for Suzuka, this is as close as you're ever going to get. I mean, the margin of victory here over the last few years, last 5 Japanese Grand Prix have all been won by margins in excess of 10 seconds. The lead down to 3rd, covered by 2 seconds as they cross the line. And Norris takes out another 10th on Max Verstappen in that lap. We don't know how Max Verstappen's tyres are and whether he's suffering any braining issues and whether Norris has preserved a bit more performance juice in that Pirelli rubber to use between now and the end of the race. Oscar Piastri, I should say, seems to have pretty much a lot of performance juice left in his tyres because he's coming back at Norris once again, and bit by bit these 3 are pulling away from Charles Leclerc in 4th. The gap now 11 seconds back to Charles Leclerc. As towards the hairpin we go once again. Verstappen under braking, Norris under braking, Piastri under braking. The 1, 2, 3 separated by a few car lengths, and this is Kimi Antonelli into the chicane. Yeah, and he's a bit more right-hand down.
And he braked a little bit over the grass. He's a little twitch there at the end of the braking. Bit of a risk taken there.
Just a touch. The top 6 as they are on the road at the moment is the top 6 positions as they started on the grid.
And you're the fastest man on track.
I'm giving everything, mate.
Good. You can also see that Lando is pushing super hard. He was coming out, little slide, and he's close now. Piastri is very close.
This is the closest he has been as Carlos Sainz gets past Nico Hülkenberg and up into 15th. He has not been any closer than this to his teammate down the main straight, 17 kilometers an hour. Extra pace. He is gaining on Norris. He's gaining on Norris. He can't quite get wheel to wheel with the other McLaren going through and into turn 1, and you can see there just how twitchy it is for Oscar Piastri through those S's. He needs to be, I'd say, coming out of the chicane, Jack, about 3.5 tenths behind to get that DRS advantage.
Well, to get the DRS advantage, to get a bigger toe as well. And did I hear a downshift before the corner?
He might have done. I was talking, I couldn't hear a thing. That's why I've got you alongside me. And there's Carlos Sainz alongside and ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, as I mentioned.
And the soft tyres are actually working well. It's not giving up at all.
No, not at all. It's promoting Carlos Sainz back up the order, but he didn't go to Williams to be down in 15th all the time. Yes,
he went to Williams to get points.
Yeah, but he got promoted to a point, didn't he, in China? A bit like Logan Sargent when he scored his first point. It was disqualifications for Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc that gave Sargent the point in Austin that time, and it was those disqualifications and for Pierre Gasly that helped Carlos Sainz out in China. Right, back to Piastri, who will get a toe down this back straight. Watch the gap between himself and Lando Norris this time. This time it is that little bit more, and I wonder, is that because he's having to recharge his battery because he gave the electrical energy a big boost and a big kick on the previous lap?
True, they do have to recharge a little bit more, so they don't have the same power on every lap, and also he got so close that he did heat his tire up just that little bit more.
So he's got DRS still, that will keep him in touch just that little bit, and he was told to use the overtake button, Oscar Piastri, on the last lap. Now, while all this is happening, Max Verstappen, by a couple of tenths, has increased his lead out in front. And I'm sure there'll be questions asked, Jack, at the end, and you'll probably be asking them along with Simon and Naomi as to why McLaren didn't do something different in the pit stops to try and engineer a 1-3 instead of a 2-3, as it looks at the moment.
And the information was out there. All they had to do was watch the race like we're doing. Or maybe listen to us.
Yeah. Well, they might have us on mission control back at Woking on the pit wall. Our commentary on today. Piastri is just slipping back a little bit out of DRS touch of Lando Norris. On lap 50 of 53. And to be fair, whilst we've been concentrating on what McLaren will do, Max Verstappen out in front is still at his imperious best. And anyone who thinks Max Verstappen isn't driving to 100% at the moment because the car's not quite there for him, so he's just losing a little bit of interest, well, forget that on the basis of this weekend. He was magnificent in qualifying yesterday, and he has been in championship form in this race so far.
He's worked at it all weekend. He got the car to a situation where he could drive it the way he wants. It's neutral, it's balanced. It's not the awful Red Bull we've seen for a few races. He even managed to trim it, to take some wing off, to be quick down the straight. That's really helping him out today.
Certainly is.
That's the closest Norris has been for a while.
It is, and in doing so, he's dropped Oscar Piastri by about 3/10 on the previous lap. Antonelli, meanwhile, has put another 4/10 off the advantage that George Russell has got over him. And the two Mercedes might be neck and neck on the last lap as well. And we've been talking about Carlos Sainz, who's been trying to make progress up the field. Gets a nice slipstream and DRS advantage behind Jack Doohan, and that'll be an overtake for Carlos Sainz, I would imagine. Let's have a little look. He's trying to go around the outside. Doohan didn't have the pace down the straight there to defend that any longer. So Sainz up into 14th spot. Yes.
Still a disappointing result for him,
Jack Doohan or Carlos Sainz?
Right. No, Doohan is just beyond his teammate. That's not too bad. 15 seconds behind, but still, after the weekend he's had, it's not bad.
Race where he's raced up before in Formula 3, Asian Formula 3, a couple of races here, and his debut in F1 for this season. Lando Norris, 1.2 seconds behind. You just get the feeling here, Max Verstappen has got this under control. No one's headed Max Verstappen, no one's beaten Max Verstappen here since 2019. On a track that you say is all about the drivers. Jack Villeneuve is showing today.
And also getting the car to respond the way you want it. That's super important. You see which driver manages to work with his team. Not just sit down, ask for data to tell them how to drive, but actually gets involved, and Max does it. But what I found surprising is how Norris, even in a toneless stretch, doesn't gain any time, doesn't get any closer.
Anthony, let's head to you.
Yeah, just a thought on this one, Crofty. You look at someone like Antonelli, who stayed out there long on the medium tyre, and he did that late pit stop. He's now on the hards, just like everybody else, and he's consistently lapping faster than all of the cars in front of him, and holds on to the fastest lap of the race still. And he's closing in on George Russell, his teammate. So they proved with Mercedes and Antonelli that going long and using your car in free air, it worked. I just don't understand why McLaren didn't do that, at least with one of their cars. Maybe they'll have their reasons, but at least one of their cars should have used the potential of this amazing beast around this track. It is clear to me that the car is faster than the Red Bull today on this track. It has been all week, especially on the long run. So I don't understand why at least one of them didn't have free air today. They've sat in dirty air the entire race.
Yeah, particularly for a team that acknowledges that when a car is in free air, it is worth 2, 3, maybe 4/10 of a lap of extra pace. McLaren knew all about that going into this race. And talking of this race, we now start the final lap. Max Verstappen, 1.5 seconds clear of Lando Norris. Oscar Piastri back in third. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
I mean, I hear what Anthony's saying, but this is what happens when you're dealing with the Dutch lion that is Max Verstappen. You can't give him. And when, if you're McLaren, you get out-qualified by Max Verstappen, this is exactly what happens. You lose the race. This has got to be the first operational mistake, the lost opportunity in this championship for McLaren so far this year. And what a drive by Max.
A super drive by Max in what is the last race that Red Bull have here at Suzuka, the home of Honda, with Honda, the Honda power unit that's inspired the Red Bull powertrain, and they go it alone from next year onwards. It's a celebration as much for Honda as it is for Red Bull here in Suzuka.
Definitely, and with the colour scheme as well, to remind the past. So obviously they came here for Tsunoda, but it's a win, and that's what matters.
It is all about the victory, the colour scheme, the livery in honour of the Richie Ginther Honda that won in 1966 to give Honda their first win in Formula One, while Max Verstappen's going to give them their latest win in Formula One. They went into this race, Red Bull level with McLaren and Ferrari on 7 wins here at Suzuka. They are going to make it 8 for the team, and Max Verstappen, with just 3 more corners to go now, is going to become the first driver to win 4 consecutive races here at Suzuka. What a performance from the reigning champion. Max Verstappen wins the Japanese Grand Prix. McLaren have to settle for 2nd and 3rd. Lando Norris stays ahead in the championship. It's just a point between the drivers now, but I think Max Verstappen has very much proved his point here at Suzuka, that he is the driver that can make all the difference.
Incredible, but that's the kind of track where you will see this happen, even when it's unexpected. With the car they had this year, since the start of the season, you never expected them to actually win by being the best out there.
Charles Leclerc comes home for 4th place. George Russell holds off Kimi Antonelli for 5th and 6th. Lewis Hamilton 7th for Ferrari, ahead of Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls. Alex Albon will finish in 9th, ahead of Ollie Behrman, who scores yet another point for a Haas team, and a very welcome point. That will be 2 as he crosses the line. And then there's a right old battle going on here with Jack Doohan ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, Liam Lawson, Esteban Ocon and Gabriel Bortoletto racing to the end. Tsunoda in his home race comes home for, probably for him, a very disappointing 12th place for his new team. Then Pierre Gasly, and then Carlos Sainz crosses the line. Jack Doohan should hold up the rest that are all chomping at the bit behind him. Jack Doohan finishes 15th ahead of Hülkenberg, then comes Lawson, then Ocon, and then Bortoletto. Lance Stroll is the last finisher. We have had no retirement whatsoever. We had 4 races last year with no retirements. All 20 finished here, and that's the one that headed them all. Max Verstappen started first, finished first, never in doubt.
That's perfection. Just perfection, Max. Fantastic.
Wow! Thank you, guys. Wow. Oh, mate, what an unbelievable weekend. What a great turnaround after the difficult start. You see, we never give up. We